What happens when a man who has everything is about to lose the one thing he never truly valued? We're not talking about his fortune, his penthouse, or his private jet. We're talking about his wife. Picture this: the sterile white walls of the most exclusive maternity ward in the city. A woman is in the throes of labor, her body screaming as she prepares to bring new life into the world. Her husband, a self-made tech billionaire, is just a few feet away. But he's not holding her hand. He's on his phone, closing the deal of a lifetime, while his mistress stands by his side. But in this story of ultimate betrayal, there is a twist so profound it will shatter his entire empire. Oliver Sterling believed he was the master of his universe. At 35, his face was plastered on the covers of Forbes and Wired. His company, Sterling Industries, was a titan of innovation, a behemoth that had devoured competitors and reshaped the digital landscape. He lived in a sprawling New York City penthouse that was less a home and more a monument to his success, with floor-to-ceiling windows that looked down on the world he had conquered. Every object was curated, every surface polished, every interaction scheduled. His wife, Chloe Sterling, was supposed to be the most beautiful and perfect of his acquisitions. They had met 5 years ago, when she was a soft-spoken art curator, with a brilliant mind and a warmth that briefly melted his icy ambition. He saw her as the perfect partner, elegant, intelligent, and from a respectable, albeit unremarkable, middle-class family, the Chens. They were quiet people, a high school principal, and a retired librarian, whom Oliver treated with a polite but visible condescension during their rare holiday visits. They didn't fit into his world of cutthroat deals and champagne-fueled galas. In the first year of their marriage, Chloe had tried to build a home within the glass fortress. She filled it with art that had soul, not just a price tag. She tried to schedule unscheduled time evenings where phones were forbidden. But Oliver's universe had no room for spontaneity. His phone was a phantom limb, an extension of his will, and it was never silent. Now 9 months pregnant with their first child, Chloe felt the full weight of her gilded cage. The penthouse had never felt larger or colder. Oliver's excitement about the baby seemed transactional. He had already hired a team of nannies, enrolled the unborn child in the most exclusive preschools, and set up a trust fund that could finance a small nation. But he had never once simply placed his hand on her swollen belly and waited to feel his son kick. He was engineering a perfect heir, not preparing for fatherhood. Lately, his distraction had morphed into a manic obsession. He was on the verge of the biggest acquisition of his career, a hostile takeover of a rival tech firm, Apex Innovations. Apex was the final piece of his puzzle, the move that would make him not just a billionaire, but a legend. He spoke of it constantly, his eyes gleaming with a predatory light. "It's about legacy, Chloe," he'd said just last night, pacing the length of their living room. His phone pressed to his ear. "This deal, this is immortality." Chloe sat on the sofa, a book resting unread on her lap, feeling as much a part of the decor as the marble statue in the corner. "What about this legacy?" she had asked, softly gesturing to her belly. Oliver had paused, glancing over. "Of course, sweetheart. This is all for him. For us." But his focus was already back on the phone call, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper as he spoke to his legal team. That night, Chloe couldn't sleep. A deep, unsettling fear had taken root. It wasn't just the impending birth. It was the gnawing realization that she was utterly alone. The calls Oliver was now taking at all hours weren't just with his lawyers. Sometimes a different voice would murmur on the other end, a distinctly feminine voice, smooth and confident. When Chloe had once asked who it was, Oliver had waved her off. Isabella Rossi, lead counsel for the opposition, just keeping the enemy close. But the tone wasn't adversarial. It was intimate. On this Tuesday morning, the city was slick with a fine mist. Chloe awoke to a dull, persistent ache in her lower back. She dismissed it as another discomfort of late pregnancy. Oliver was already gone, a note left on the kitchen island. Final push on Apex. Don't wait up. Oh. By midday, the ache was no longer dull. It was a rhythmic, tightening a wave of pressure that stole her breath. She clutched the cool marble of the counter, breathing through it, her heart starting to pound. She knew this feeling from the birthing classes she'd attended alone. It was time. Her hands trembled as she dialed Oliver's number. It rang once, twice, then went to voicemail. "Hi, you've reached Oliver Sterling. I'm busy changing the world. Leave a message." She called again. Voicemail. And again. Voicemail. A third wave of pain, sharper this time, crashed over her. She slid down the kitchen cabinet, her breath coming in ragged gasps. Alone in a palace of glass and steel, with no one to answer her call, Chloe Sterling knew her life and Oliver's was about to change forever, but not in the way anyone could have possibly imagined. In a boardroom on the 50th floor of a Wall Street skyscraper, Oliver Sterling was in his element. The air crackled with tension and the scent of expensive coffee. He was flanked by his top lawyer, Benjamin Carter, and a team of analysts who looked at him with a mixture of fear and reverence. On the other side of the massive mahogany table sat the grim-faced board members of Apex Innovations. This was the final meeting, the moment he would break their resolve. His phone vibrated against the polished wood. The screen lit up Chloe. He glanced at it, a flicker of annoyance crossing his face. He'd told her he couldn't be disturbed. This was the most critical day of his professional life. He silenced the phone with a tap of his thumb and slid it face down. She was probably just calling about the color of the nursery again. It could wait. "Gentlemen," Oliver said, his voice a smooth, confident baritone that commanded the room. "Let's not prolong the inevitable. My offer is more than generous. It's a lifeline. Your stock is plummeting. Your last product launch was a disaster. I am offering you a golden parachute. Take it." His phone vibrated again. "Chloe." A text message followed. "Oliver. I think it's starting. Please call me." He read it, his jaw tightening slightly. Starting. It was probably just Braxton Hicks. The doctors said first babies always took their time. She was being dramatic. He had a company to conquer. He typed a quick reply under the table. "In a meeting. Can't talk. Call Dr. Miller if worried." He didn't wait for a response. He was a shark that had scented blood in the water, and he would not be distracted. Back in the penthouse, Chloe stared at his text message, a sob catching in her throat. The pain was intensifying, the waves coming closer together. "Call Dr. Miller." As if it were a simple technical issue to be delegated. She clutched her belly, another contraction seizing her body, forcing a guttural cry from her lips. The world was narrowing to a tunnel of pain, and the one person who was supposed to be her anchor was refusing to answer the phone. Panic began to set in. She tried to stand, but her legs felt weak. She crawled to the sofa and fumbled for her phone again. She couldn't call her parents. They lived 3 hours away and would only panic. There was only one other person she could trust. With shaking fingers, she dialed her younger sister, Sophia Chen. Sophia, a fiery and fiercely protective high school teacher, answered on the first ring. "Chloe, you okay? You sound weird." "Soph." "It's time," Chloe gasped, her voice strained. "The baby's coming." "Oh my God. Okay, don't panic. Where's Oliver?" "He's in a meeting." Chloe whispered the words, tasting like ash. "He's not answering." A string of curses erupted from Sophia's end of the line. "That son of a bitch! I'm on my way. I'll be there in 20 minutes. Have you called the doctor? Is your bag packed?" "Yes, the bag's by the door," Chloe breathed, focusing on her sister's practical, commanding voice. "The doctor said to come in." "Okay, Chloe. Just breathe. I'm coming. We don't need him." Those last words echoed in Chloe's mind. We don't need him. For months, she had felt that emotionally. Now it was a stark, physical reality. 20 minutes later, Sophia burst through the door, finding Chloe on the floor, breathing through another contraction. Without a word, she scooped up the hospital bag, helped her sister to her feet, and guided her trembling body out of the cold, silent apartment. As the elevator descended, Chloe's phone buzzed one last time. It was a text from Oliver. "Deal is almost done. Will be a huge day for our family." Chloe looked at the message, then at her sister's determined face. A strange, chilling calm washed over her, cutting through the pain. He was celebrating the birth of his new legacy while completely ignoring the one that was currently fighting its way into the world. In that moment, something inside her, something that had been slowly cracking for years, finally shattered. The woman who entered the hospital that afternoon was not the same one who had woken up in Oliver Sterling's bed. The Harris Medical Pavilion was the epitome of luxury healthcare. It was more like a 5-star hotel than a hospital with private suites, concierge services, and a staff trained to handle the city's most powerful and demanding clientele. Chloe, leaning heavily on Sophia, was checked in immediately. They were ushered into a spacious birthing suite with soft lighting and a view of the East River. But no amount of luxury could mask the brutal reality of labor. Hours passed in a blur of pain, monitoring, and deep rhythmic breathing. Sophia was a rock, holding her hand, wiping her brow, whispering encouragements. She'd sent Oliver a dozen furious texts and left a scathing voicemail on his assistant's phone. There was no reply. It was almost 7 p.m. when he finally arrived. Oliver swept into the room, not with the panicked concern of an expectant father, but with the triumphant energy of a conquering hero. He was still in his impeccably tailored suit, his hair perfectly coiffed. He hadn't even loosened his tie. "We did it, Chloe," he announced, his voice booming in the quiet room. "We got Apex. The deal is closed. We're unstoppable." He strode over to her, his phone still in hand, and gave her a perfunctory kiss on the forehead. Chloe flinched, turning her face away. The smell of his expensive cologne was nauseating. Another contraction was building, and she squeezed Sophia's hand so hard her knuckles turned white. "Oliver!" Sophia hissed, her eyes like daggers. "She's in labor. She's been in labor for 7 hours. Where the hell have you been?" Oliver's celebratory mood deflated slightly. He looked at the heart monitor, the IV drip, and Chloe's sweat-drenched face, as if seeing them for the first time. I know. I came as soon as I could. The final signing was unavoidable." He tried to take Chloe's other hand, but she pulled it away. "Get out," she whispered, her voice raw. "What, Chloe, don't be like that. It was a big day." Our son is going to be born into an empire, he said, his tone placating as if speaking to a child. Before the argument could escalate, the door to the suite opened again. A woman stood there poised and impossibly chic in a form-fitting designer dress. She was tall with raven hair pulled back in a severe ponytail and a gaze that was both sharp and predatory. She held a small, expensive-looking gift bag. It was Isabella Rossi. Sophia shot to her feet. "Who the hell are you? This is a private room." Isabella's lips curved into a cool, dismissive smile. She ignored Sophia completely, her eyes fixed on Oliver. "I hope I'm not interrupting," she said, her voice like velvet-wrapped steel. "I just wanted to drop this off and to congratulate the victor in person." Oliver's face went pale. He looked from Isabella to Chloe, a deer caught in the headlights. "Isabella, what are you doing here? This is not the time or the place." "Isn't it?" she countered, gliding further into the room. She placed the gift bag on a side table. "We just closed the biggest deal of our careers. It feels like a moment to be shared." Her gaze drifted to Chloe, a flicker of something that looked like pity, or perhaps triumph in her eyes. "You must be the wife. Chloe is it I've heard so much about you." Chloe stared at her, the pieces clicking into place with horrifying clarity. The late-night calls, the intimate tone. This was no mere business rival. This was the other woman, standing in her delivery room, and her husband had brought her here. Not literally, perhaps, but his actions, his world, his betrayal, they had invited her in. A wave of pain, more intense than any before, ripped through Chloe. But this time it was mixed with a pure, white-hot rage. She let out a scream that was part agony and part primal fury. The heart monitor beeped erratically. "Everyone out," a stern voice commanded. A no-nonsense nurse, Patricia, had entered, taking in the scene with a practiced, weary eye. "Out now. The patient's blood pressure is spiking. You," she said, pointing a finger at Oliver, "are the father. Then you can stay. The rest of you leave." "I'm not going anywhere," Isabella said smoothly, crossing her arms. "Oliver and I have things to discuss." "I'm his sister," Sophia snapped, standing her ground beside Chloe's bed. "This is a hospital, not a boardroom or a social club," Nurse Patricia retorted, her patience gone. "I will call security. Get out." Oliver looked completely overwhelmed, his carefully constructed universe imploding. He opened his mouth to say something to try and control the situation, but no words came out. He just stood there, useless, as his wife writhed in agony, and his mistress and sister-in-law squared off a storm of his own making, breaking right over his head. Nurse Patricia, a woman who had seen every form of human drama play out within the walls of a delivery ward, was not one to be trifled with. "I am not asking again," she said, her voice dangerously low. She picked up the room's phone. "Security to the Sterling suite, please." Isabella Rossi's compseur finally cracked. A flash of anger crossed her features. "This is absurd. Oliver handled this." But Oliver was paralyzed. He was a man used to manipulating stock prices and boardrooms, not the raw, volatile emotions of the three women whose lives were colliding because of him. He looked at Chloe, her face contorted in pain and betrayal, and for the first time, a sliver of genuine fear pierced his armor of arrogance. "Isabella, please," he managed, his voice weak. "Just wait outside." "Wait outside like some common assistant," she scoffed. She turned her venom on Chloe. You know, for months he's been telling me how he's trapped in a loveless marriage, how his wife doesn't understand his ambition. He was going to leave you after the baby was born, after the deal was done. He told me that. Every word was a physical blow to Chloe. She pushed herself up on her elbows, her eyes burning with unshed tears and newfound strength. And you believed him? She shot back, her voice shaking but clear. You thought you were the special one. You're just a clause in a contract, a temporary asset. He collects things, Isabella, trophies, companies, people. And when they no longer serve their purpose, he discards them. And what does that make you? Isabella sneered. The outdated model he can't wait to trade in. Enough! Sophia roared, stepping between Isabella and the bed. Get your cheap ambulance-chasing perfume out of this room before I physically throw you out. Just then, 2 uniformed security guards appeared at the door. They were large, stoic men, unfazed by the wealth on display. Is there a problem here, nurse? One asked Patricia. Yes, the nurse said calmly. This woman needs to be escorted from the premises. She's not family, and she is distressing my patient. Isabella looked at Oliver, her expression demanding he intervene. Oliver, are you going to let this happen? Oliver finally found his voice, a desperate attempt to regain control. Wait, everyone just calm down. There's no need for security. Isabella, you should go. We'll talk later. Oh, there's nothing to talk about, Isabella said, her voice dripping with ice. A cruel smirk played on her lips as she looked at Chloe one last time. Congratulations on the new heir. I suppose someone has to produce them. Enjoy your moment. She turned with a dramatic flourish and walked out the security guards, following her down the hall. The room fell into a heavy silence, broken only by Chloe's ragged breathing and the steady beep of the monitors. Sophia rushed to her sister's side, her own face pale with rage. Oliver ran a hand through his hair, looking utterly lost. Chloe, I am so sorry. I don't know why she came. This deal, it makes people crazy. She didn't make you cheat, Oliver. Chloe said, her voice flat and devoid of emotion. She didn't make you ignore my calls. She didn't make you value a contract more than the birth of your own child. You did all of that on your own. Suddenly, a sharp, piercing alarm blared from the fetal heart monitor. The steady beeping turned into a frantic, high-pitched whine. Nurse Patricia's eyes snapped to the screen. The baby's heart rate is dropping, Dr. Miller. I need you in here now. The world dissolved into controlled chaos. Medical staff flooded the room. They pushed Oliver and Sophia towards the door. We need space. You need to leave. Oliver stood frozen in the hallway, the sterile white walls closing in on him. He could hear snippets of urgent conversation from the room. Deceleration, cord compression, prep for an emergency C-section. His empire was secure. His legacy was cemented. And inside that room, his wife and unborn child were in peril, a crisis he had directly caused and was now utterly powerless to stop. The master of the universe was just a man in a hallway, locked out of the only thing that should have ever mattered. The hallway of a maternity ward is a strange purgatory. It's a place of anxious pacing, hushed whispers, and the distant, muffled cries of newborns. For Oliver Sterling, it became a makeshift boardroom, a prison of his own design. He couldn't sit still. He paced back and forth, his $1,000 shoes squeaking on the linoleum, the adrenaline from the Apex deal curdling into a toxic cocktail of fear and impotence. Sophia stood near the door, a silent, furious sentinel. She refused to look at him, her arms crossed tightly, her entire being radiating contempt. Every few minutes, a nurse would hurry in or out of Chloe's room, their face a mask of professional urgency, ignoring Oliver's desperate questions. His phone, the source of his power and his downfall, buzzed in his hand. It was Benjamin Carter, his lawyer. Instinct took over. He swiped to answer, turning away from Sophia as if to create a bubble of business in the sea of personal catastrophe. "Benjamin," he said, his voice strained. "What is it?" "Oliver, we have a problem," Benjamin said, his tone grim. "A big one. The Apex deal isn't as closed as you thought." Oliver felt a surge of disbelief. "What are you talking about?" "The board caved. I saw them sign the preliminary agreement." "That was the preliminary, Oliver. It was contingent on the final vote of the majority shareholder. We thought it was a formality. A reclusive European billionaire who always votes with the board. But he hasn't voted. In fact, his representatives have just informed us that the controlling stake in Apex was quietly transferred to a new entity 6 months ago, a private anonymously held family trust." Oliver stopped pacing. A cold dread, colder than the fear for his wife and child, began to creep up his spine. "What trust? Who are they?" "Find out. Throw money at them. Whatever it takes. I did not just spend 6 months of my life on this to have it torpedoed by some ghost." "We're trying," Benjamin said, the stress evident in his voice. "They're stonewalling us. They're registered through a labyrinth of shell corporations. But the message we received was clear. The new owner is re-evaluating the acquisition. They want to see the final terms and sign off personally. Without their signature, the deal is dead. The press release will have to be retracted. Sterling Industries' stock will tank on the rumor. You'll be a laughing stock." A laughing stock. The word hit Oliver with physical force. He leaned against the wall, the starched collar of his shirt, suddenly feeling like a noose. His entire identity was built on victory, on the perception of infallibility. This couldn't be happening. He saw Isabella Rossi at the far end of the hallway near the elevators, speaking animatedly on her phone. She hadn't left. She was waiting, watching. She must have heard the same rumors. She looked over at him, a predatory glint in her eye. She was a shark, and if his deal was bleeding, she would be the first to attack. "Get it done, Benjamin," Oliver snarled into the phone. "Find out who this shareholder is. I want a name. I don't care what it costs or what you have to do. I need that signature by morning." He hung up, his mind racing. He was losing control. In the boardroom, in the hospital, in his life, everything was unraveling. Just then the door to Chloe's room opened. Nurse Patricia stepped out, her face grim. "Mr. Sterling," Oliver rushed forward. "Is she okay? Is the baby okay?" "The baby's heart rate has stabilized for now. We've avoided a C-section, but she's in distress and she's exhausted. The doctor is with her." Her eyes were cold, professional, but held a deep, unspoken judgment. "She needs to sign some consent forms for a possible epidural. And she asked me to give you this." She handed him a thick, sealed manila envelope. Oliver's name was written on the front in Chloe's elegant, familiar handwriting. He stared at it, confused. "What is this divorce papers?" The thought came out of nowhere, a testament to his panicked state. "I'm a nurse, Mr. Sterling, not a process server," she said icily. "She just said it was urgent business. Now, if you'll excuse me." She turned and went back into the room, closing the door firmly behind her. Oliver looked at the envelope in his hands. It felt heavy, portentous. With trembling fingers, he tore it open. Inside wasn't a letter. It was a stack of legal documents filled with dense paragraphs and signature lines. The top page was a proxy vote authorization. His eyes scanned the text, his brain struggling to comprehend the legalese. His phone buzzed again. It was Benjamin. "Oliver, my God." His lawyer's voice was a choked whisper. "We got the name. We found out who controls the trust." "Who?" Oliver demanded. "Who is it?" "The final transfer of ownership was executed this morning. The trust is officially registered as the Chen Sterling Family Trust." The world tilted on its axis. Chen, Chloe's maiden name, the name of the quiet, unassuming family he had so thoroughly dismissed. Oliver's eyes dropped back to the document in his hand. He saw the name of the company it was for, printed in bold black letters at the top of the page. Apex Innovations. It all clicked into place in one horrifying, cataclysmic moment of understanding. The reclusive majority shareholder. The family trust. Chloe hadn't just been planning for a baby. She had been planning for war. The deal he had sacrificed everything for didn't belong to him. It belonged to her. For a long, suspended moment, Oliver Sterling couldn't breathe. The sterile, polished hallway seemed to warp around him, stretching into an infinite, silent tunnel. The clinical air, once smelling of antiseptic and quiet efficiency, now felt thick and suffocating, each particle charged with his own failure. The legal documents in his hand felt impossibly heavy, as if the weight of his entire crumbling empire had been condensed into those few sheets of paper. The Chen Sterling Family Trust. The name was an absurdity, a paradox that his mind refused to process. It was like hearing that a lamb had taken down a wolf pack. His mind a finely tuned machine for hostile takeovers and market domination sputtered and stalled. It scrambled for a logical explanation. A mistake. A clerical error. Perhaps a distant, unknown Sterling relative had married a Chen. It had to be a coincidence. It was the only possibility that allowed his universe to remain intact. He replayed the last year in a frantic, disjointed montage, searching for a clue, a sign he had missed. Chloe's family. The Chens. Her father, Richard, was a high school principal whose greatest ambition seemed to be perfecting his rose garden. Her mother, Mary, was a retired librarian who spoke in soft, apologetic tones and catalogued her spices alphabetically. He saw them clearly in his mind's eye, sitting at his dinner table during their last excruciating holiday visit, looking out of place and timid amidst the cold chrome and sprawling city views of his penthouse. He had treated them with the polite surface-level condescension he reserved for all people he deemed unimportant to social utility, to be tolerated for Chloe's sake. Then a flicker of a memory dismissed as inconsequential at the time ignited in his brain. It was from about a year ago. Chloe had been quiet for days, grieving. Her estranged uncle, her mother's brother, had passed away. Oliver had barely registered the news, offering a clipped "my condolences" before turning back to his work. Later, she had approached him in his study, holding a sheaf of papers from an estate lawyer. "My uncle left me his portfolio," she had said, her voice small. "It's mostly tech stocks. I don't really understand any of it." Oliver remembered leaning back in his chair, a patronizing smile on his face. He hadn't even looked at the papers she held out. "Don't you worry about it, sweetheart." He had told her the words, now dripping with a fatal irony. "I'll have my accountants roll it into our asset management fund. It'll be a nice little nest egg for you." He had seen it as pocket money, a quaint inheritance. He, the great Oliver Sterling, had never once thought to ask the name of her uncle or the specific companies in the portfolio. Why would he? He was the sun. Her small inheritance was a firefly. It never occurred to him that a firefly could hold the power to blot out the sun. On the other end of the phone, Benjamin Carter's voice was a frantic buzz pulling him from his spiraling thoughts. "Oliver, are you there? The vote just came through. Our contacts on the inside are in a panic. The majority shareholder has officially voted. It's a no. The resolution to accept your acquisition offer has been defeated. It's over. The deal is dead." The words hit him not like a hammer, but like the slow, inexorable crush of a hydraulic press. No. The vote was cast. The war was over. And he had lost. He slowly lowered the phone, the sleek black device feeling alien and useless in his hand. His eyes dropped back to the proxy form Chloe had given him, delivered by a nurse like a final mocking sacrament. He saw it for what it was now. It wasn't a tool. It was a message, a beautifully cruel piece of theater designed to make him a spectator at his own execution. She hadn't needed his input or his signature. She had wanted him to be holding this worthless piece of paper at the precise moment he learned the truth to ensure he understood the full depth of his irrelevance. She hadn't just defeated him. She had humiliated him. His phone buzzed again, a violent vibration against his palm. It wasn't a call. It was a news alert from the Wall Street Journal. The headline, a blazing epitaph for his ambition. Sterling Industries' Apex takeover bid collapses in shock vote. Stock plummets 30% in after-hours trading. It was real. It was public. His failure was now echoing in every newsroom and trading floor on the planet. He was a laughing stock. The door to the suite opened with a soft click, and the sound made him flinch. Sophia emerged. Her expression was no longer just one of fury. It was something far more terrifying. It was the calm, cold satisfaction of a warrior who had just watched her queen burn an enemy city to the ground. She walked straight up to him, her presence a solid wall of contempt. "She wants to see you," Sophia said. Her voice was flat, devoid of any emotion except a chilling finality. It was not the request of a sister-in-law. It was the summons of a queen's herald. Oliver felt a strange sense of detachment, as if he were watching a movie of his own life. He walked past Sophia, his legs feeling like they were wading through cement. He pushed the door open and stepped inside. The room was preternaturally quiet. The frantic energy of the earlier medical emergency had vanished, replaced by a heavy, profound stillness. Chloe was propped up against several pillows. Her face was pale, her body clearly exhausted from the ordeal of labor. But her eyes were a revelation. The soft, forgiving warmth he had taken for granted for 5 years was gone, extinguished completely. In its place was a clear, calm, and unbreakable strength. It was the look of a woman who had walked through the inferno of his betrayal and had emerged not scarred, but forged into something new, something harder. "Hello, Oliver," she said. Her voice was quiet, yet it carried the devastating force of an earthquake, shaking the last remaining pillars of his reality. "Chloe. Apex." He stammered, the useless proxy form still clutched in his hand. "Your uncle, Chen. Why didn't you tell me?" A faint, sad smile touched her lips, a smile of profound disappointment. "Tell you what, Oliver, that my quiet, bookish uncle was the anonymous founder of Apex Innovations, that the nice little nest egg you couldn't be bothered to look at was in fact the controlling interest in the very company you were obsessed with conquering. Would you have even believed me?" She shifted against the pillows, her gaze never leaving his. "You see, that's the part you've never understood. You never saw me as a partner. You saw me as a beautiful, supportive painting on the wall of your life. You dismissed my family as simpletons. You dismissed my intelligence as a hobby. You assumed I was just Waiting. Waiting for you to come home, waiting for you to pay attention, waiting for you to decide what our life would be. She took a slow, deliberate breath, the beeping of the monitor beside her a steady, rhythmic counterpoint to his shattering world. For the last year, I've watched you sacrifice everything that mattered on the altar of this deal. I've listened to your lies. I've heard your hushed, intimate phone calls with Isabella. I held on to the hope that the man I married was still in there somewhere. I prayed you would wake up, that you would choose your family. Her voice cracked for just a fraction of a second before regaining its steel. When I went into labor this morning, that was the final test. Not for me. For you. I called you Oliver. I begged you to come, and in the most important moment of our lives, you looked at your phone, you saw my name, and you chose the deal. Her gaze was unwavering, a prosecutor delivering a final verdict. So I decided to choose too. I choose my son. I choose myself. And I choose to protect what my family built from the man who was trying to tear it down while simultaneously betraying his own. He was a king who had just discovered his castle was built on a chessboard and that he had been a pawn all along. The architect of his ruin, the mastermind who had outmaneuvered him at every turn, was his wife. The woman he had ignored, cheated on, and left alone to bring their child into the world. In the absolute silence of the room, Oliver Sterling finally truly understood the meaning of the word checkmate. Oliver Sterling, the man who had once commanded boardrooms with a single cutting phrase, found himself utterly voiceless. He sank into the plush visitor's chair in the corner of the room, a throne of shame in the new kingdom his wife had just revealed. The legal papers, the worthless proxy vote, slipped from his numb fingers and scattered across the polished floor like fallen leaves from a dead tree. The air was thick with the silent, screaming truth of his defeat. He was a conqueror who had discovered in the final moment of his triumph that his entire campaign had been staged and managed by the very person he sought to subjugate. He looked at Chloe, truly seeing the stranger she had become, or perhaps the woman she had been all along, hidden behind a veil of his own arrogance. He felt a pathetic, desperate question claw its way up his throat, the last gasp of a drowning man. "What do you want, Chloe?" he asked, his voice a hoarse, broken whisper that was swallowed by the silence of the room. "Is it money? Revenge? Is this all just to punish me?" Chloe's expression didn't soften, but a profound, aching sadness flickered in her eyes, a glimpse of the woman she had been before he had broken her heart. "Punishment is for children, Oliver. This is about consequences," she said, her voice a model of chilling composure. "What I wanted, what I have wanted for years, was a husband. I wanted a partner to build a life with a man who saw me as his equal. I wanted a father for my child who would value his family more than his stock portfolio." She paused, letting the weight of her words settle into the space between them. "That man, I have realized, does not exist. He was either a fantasy I created or a man you left behind long ago. So now I want something else. I want security. I want to build a fortress around my son, so that your ambition, your ego, and your betrayals can never touch him. I am taking away your ability to burn down our house for the warmth of your own vanity." Her gaze was unyielding. She gestured toward a sleek leather briefcase that Sophia, standing like a loyal guard, had placed by her bed. "While you were busy toasting your victory with your mistress this afternoon, I was on a conference call with my legal team. They are considerably more competent than yours, it seems. They drew these up." Sophia, with a deliberate and almost ceremonial slowness, opened the briefcase. She didn't produce divorce papers. That would have been too simple, too clean an exit for him. Instead, she retrieved a thick, bound document and handed it to Oliver. The title on the cover read, "Irrevocable Transfer of Controlling Interest." "It's a simple proposal." Chloe explained, her tone as level and dispassionate as if she were dictating a business memo. "A corporate restructuring, you might call it. You will sign over 60% of your controlling shares in Sterling Industries to a new irrevocable trust. The sole beneficiary of that trust will be our son Alexander Chen Sterling. As he is a minor, the trust will require a trustee to manage his interests. I will be the sole trustee." Oliver stared at her, his mind reeling as it tried to calculate the sheer scale of what she was demanding. 60%. Chloe, you want to take my company, the company I built from nothing. With my own 2 hands. A spark of his old wounded pride flared. "Did you?" She countered, a single eyebrow raised in cool disbelief. "Or did you build it with predatory loans by crushing smaller competitors, by sacrificing your humanity for a bottom line?" "I am not taking your company. Oliver, I am placing it in receivership. The family's receivership. You will retain a title. You will keep a handsome salary and a minority stake that will ensure you remain a very wealthy man for the rest of your life. But you will no longer have control. You will answer to a board that I appoint. Your power to make reckless, family-destroying decisions will be gone. It's a cold, clean amputation of your authority." She let him absorb the brutal finality of her terms before she delivered the final devastating blow. "This, Oliver, is the non-negotiable term for my silence and my discretion. The alternative is considerably less pleasant for you." "Alternative?" He scoffed, the sound hollow and weak, even to his own ears. "Oh yes," Chloe said, a dangerous glint in her eyes. "There is always an alternative. In the alternative, I don't sign this agreement. Instead, tomorrow morning, I hold a press conference. I am, after all, the newly revealed majority shareholder of Apex Innovations, the woman who single-handedly torpedoed your great legacy deal. I think the media would be quite interested in my story." She leaned forward slightly, her voice dropping as she painted a vivid picture of his utter annihilation. "I will tell them everything. I will tell them about the husband who ignored his wife's frantic calls while she was in labor, all to close a deal. I'll tell them about the mistress he had waiting in the wings. Then I, the wronged wife, will announce that Apex Innovations, financially robust and now morally superior, is initiating a hostile takeover of the scandal-plagued Sterling Industries. With your stock already in freefall and your reputation in ashes, your shareholders will abandon you in droves. Your board will turn on you. I will use Apex's vast resources to gut your company, and I will buy its component parts for pennies on the dollar. You will be left with nothing. Not a company, not a reputation, not even a shred of dignity. You will be a business school case study on hubris and failure for generations to come." It was a checkmate delivered with the precision of a surgeon and the ruthlessness of an assassin. She had used his own playbook against him. He was trapped, his every possible move anticipated and countered. If he fought her, he would be publicly and financially obliterated. If he surrendered, he would live on as a neutered king, a figurehead in the empire. He dohodru once, ruled. He looked at her, at this brilliant, formidable woman he had married, and then discarded. He felt a sudden, dizzying sense of vertigo, as if the last 5 years of his life had been a lie, a carefully constructed stage play where he was the only actor who didn't know the script. His gaze drifted past her out the large window that overlooked the hospital's main entrance. As if on cue, he saw Isabella Rossi, a sharp silhouette under the cold blue lights of the evening. She was arguing with the taxi driver, her frustration palpable even from this distance. She had seen the news alerts. She understood the seismic shift in power. The ship was sinking, and she, a creature of pure self-interest, was trying to flee. "There's one more thing," Chloe said, her voice pulling him back. Her expression was hard now, all traces of sadness gone. "A loose end." She picked up the room's phone and dialed a single number. "Security. This is Chloe Sterling in Suite 7 of the Harris Pavilion. Thank you for your assistance earlier. There is a woman, Isabella Rossi, who is still on the premises. I would like to formally press charges for harassment and have her permanently trespassed from this property. She is a threat to the peace and safety of my child and myself. Please ensure she leaves the grounds immediately. Yes, I will have my lawyer follow up with a formal report in the morning." She hung up and looked at Oliver, her face a mask of cold resolve. It wasn't about jealousy anymore. It was a business decision. She was eliminating a liability. She was cleaning house. His house. Oliver watched out the window, a passive, silent observer. He saw 2 uniformed security guards approach Isabella's taxi. He saw her furious, incredulous gestures. He saw the guards stand their ground, impassive and unmovable. Finally defeated, Isabella was forced to exit the taxi and was escorted off the hospital grounds, left standing alone on the public sidewalk under the harsh glare of a streetlight. A guard remained watching her until she had no choice but to turn and walk away, disappearing into the anonymous darkness of the city. She didn't look back. The mistress was gone. The deal was dead. The empire had a new, undisputed ruler. Sophia stepped forward and placed the heavy document on the small table beside Oliver's chair. She uncapped a pen and set it down precisely in the center of the signature page. The gesture was both an offering and an order. With a shaking hand, an appendage that felt like it belonged to someone else, Oliver picked up the pen. The instrument that had signed billion-dollar deals and sealed the fates of thousands of employees now felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. He looked down at the line waiting for his name. His signature, once the most potent symbol of his power and authority, was now nothing more than the formal instrument of his surrender. It was an act of corporate suicide, and his own hand was the weapon. He signed. The scratch of the nib on the thick, expensive paper was the only sound in the room. It was the sound of a world ending. He dropped the pen. It was done. And in that precise moment of deafening silence, a new sound cut through the air. It came from the adjoining nursery, a sound that was at once fragile and ferocious. It was the first piercing cry of his newborn son, the cry of Alexander Chen Sterling. Chloe's entire being shifted. The cold strategist, the corporate queen, dissolved in an instant. Her face softened, and her focus turned completely toward the sound of her child. The battle was over. The victory won. Oliver Sterling and everything he represented had already ceased to matter. The reckoning was complete. A new reign had begun. In the end, Oliver Sterling didn't lose his fortune. He lost something far more valuable, his power, his pride, and the illusion that he was the master of his own destiny. Chloe Sterling, the woman he had dismissed and underestimated, proved that true strength isn't always loud and aggressive. Sometimes it's quiet, patient, and incredibly intelligent. She didn't just get revenge. She secured a future for her child and took back her own life, rewriting the terms of their story completely. This story is a powerful reminder that we should never judge people by their quiet demeanor or underestimate the fire that can burn within. What would you have done in Chloe's position? Could you forgive Oliver, or was his betrayal the point of no return? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. We read every single one. If this story moved you, if it made you think, please give this video a thumbs up. It really helps our channel grow. And if you want more true-to-life stories of drama, betrayal, and incredible twists, make sure you hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. You won't want to miss what we have coming next. Thank you for listening.